The other thing is gathering with community and making work with community. So even though some of my art ends up in, institutional spaces, what really gives me joy is making work with community and for community, and also making art with so-called non-artists, people that think they're not creative. That really excites me. Anyone telling me they can't draw, I'm like, come here then.
Here's a pencil.
Yeah, let's go.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Maria Birch-Moronga and I am the host of Colourbox Studio Creative Conversations. Very happy to be here. As a manuhiri, as a visitor on these lands, it's really important for me to acknowledge that the Arts Centre Melbourne sits on a site that has been a gathering place for song, storytelling and community for First Nations people for millennia. On behalf of Colourbox Studio, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to the Kaumatua, the elders, past and present. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hi, hello. My name is Maria, and I think before we get right into it, I should probably tell you a little bit about myself. I am from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm really happy to call Ngā my home now for the last almost a decade, 9 years I've lived here. I am a podcaster, a visual artist, a facilitator. I do a whole bunch of random things here and there. And as an artist, I've had the privilege of being interviewed by Colourbox Studio in their online artist series. And that was really, really fun and awesome. And now I've got the mic. I've got the power. And I'm going to be interviewing some fantastic artists. I'm super excited for us to get into their creative practices, what inspires them, what excites them. And I'm excited for you guys to hear as well, because they're so cool. I can't believe I get to interview them. Now, a little bit about Colourbox Studio. Amy Balabasi is the founder of Colourbox Studio, and the aim of it is to amplify voices of diverse creatives, filmmakers, storytellers, and that is exactly what we're here to do tonight. And first, we are going to be speaking to Paula Bella. So if everybody could welcome her to the stage. Keep going, keep clapping. I should have given you a hand up there. Now, I'm going to read you a little bio. Paula, your little bio, as if it's small. Dr. Paula Bella is a visual artist, curator, speaker, academic and writer. She's a Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara woman based at the Mundani Balak Indigenous Academic Centre at VU, Victoria Uni. Paula's visual and curatorial practice focuses on installation, photography and bush dyeing, amongst many other things we are sure to find out in this corridor, in this chat.
Thank you.
Now, you really put the multidisciplinary artist. Can you tell us a little bit about your practice and the mediums that you use?
I will, and thank you so much for having me, because so much of what I do is situated on country and in response to country, and out of respect for it, I want to pay my respects to Wurundjeri Woiwurrung as traditional owners, and also to Boonwurrung people as very close neighbours, and and as part of the colonial injury to this place, that it is also known as contested country, and in other ways it's known as shared country. So I want to pay my respects to that and how complex that is, and also to the unceded sovereignty as you spoke of. So my practice it's very much in response to it. It's also very much in response to country and Western, which my boots pay homage to. And we've spoken about cowboy kata a couple of times already. So sorry if I'm going off topic, but it's given me a lot of black joy, since it came out. I mean, all of Beyonce's work does, and her sister Solange, and during my PhD, both their albums came out and they both really got me through. I literally cited them in my ethics poster. I did. I have quotes from both albums.
Oh my God, as you should. A Seat at the Table is one of my favourite albums
Yeah.
of all time.
Yep.
It's just impeccable.
Yep.
A perfect album.
Yep.
Yeah, we were this close to playing Cowboy Carter when everybody walked in, but I was like, maybe we don't need to do that because I'm obsessed with it.
I did listen to it on the way in, as per usual, and I'll say that I have no clear vision when it comes to Beyonce. I'm completely biased. I don't care. I have no, I just love her unconditionally. We need unconditional love for certain things that give us joy. And so, yeah, that's it for haters and anyone's opinion on her cover of Jolene. I don't care either because...
It's a bop. It's a bop.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it might not be problematic in some ways, but I love her so much that I forgive her for it. And also because I grew up on country and western, and I don't know if everyone knows this, but blackfellas are obsessed with country and western music. So I don't know if you know that in general.
I didn't. Well, I didn't grow up here, so...
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And it was a schoolyard fighting topic about us liking something that people perceived as redneck and racist. But It's like, it was made by Indigenous people. It was made by black people. It was made by people of the land. And I don't know if have you heard Dolly Parton's American podcast?
No.
Dolly Parton's America, if anyone knows it.
Tell us.
She talks about the Arabic influences in her music in the Appalachian communities where she came from, and the people who were travelling over in ships and migrating at the time influenced the early beginnings of folk music. So it's why she plays such unusual scales and yodels and sings in that way.
Oh my God.
Isn't that beautiful?
That's absolutely beautiful. And I feel like what Beyonce's doing with Cowboy Carter now... Okay, so sorry. No, but we have to talk about it. It's off the time. But I feel like what Beyonce's doing with Cowboy Carter is just reminding everybody that's where country came from, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, she's from Houston. Like her family, getting told she's not really country, and it's who's saying this? Why are they even bothering to say it? Who cares? Like, it's like let it be and watch what happens with the third one anyway. So Renaissance was very important to me and my daughter, especially Rosie Kalina, who's an amazing artist and producer in her own right. And it's something we share. It gives us a lot of, because there's a lot of hard stuff that we deal with in our practices, and and also acknowledging my sister, Seal Teo, who gifted me the Scafea. And, as Aboriginal people, and I speak on behalf of myself and my immediate family, that we are in solidarity with our Palestinian siblings. And you need to find moments of joy to give you the energy to keep doing the work.
Yep.
So it is really important.
What other moments of joy do you find that helps you be resilient and create?
I think really, honestly, tea, lots of tea. That was my rider because I'm such a celebrity. I'm like, I want a cup of tea, please, Amy. Tea and an egg sandwich.
Yes.
So
Egg
we
sandwich
talked about
representation, guys.
Because a takeaway egg sandwich will make me really happy. So it's like my mum always talks about this, and she's an elder, and my mum's such a survivor and artist and, poet and creator in her own right. Her name's Margie Tang. And she always says it's the little things that are important. And she used to say this decades ago, and I never fully comprehended what Mum was talking about. And this year I'm 50, and last year Mum turned 70. And now as I'm moving into a stage of life that she's already been through, it makes more sense. The other thing is gathering with community and making work with community. So even though some of my art ends up in institutional spaces, what really gives me joy is making work with community and for community. Sorry, I'm tapping the microphone with my glasses.
No. Yeah, we gesticulate wildly.
My dad's also Italian, so I can't stop myself. It's
in your blood.
Yeah. I mean, as mob, we do it a lot too. And then with the thing with Dad, I'm like, I have to hold my hands down sometimes. It's all really important. So I get a lot of joy out of making art with other people, for other people, and also making art with so-called non-artists, people that think they're not creative. That really excites me. Anyone telling me they can't draw, I'm like, come here then.
Here's a pencil.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. It sounds like your family is quite creative. Can you pinpoint, like, has creativity always been an outlet for your family, or can you remember when you started creating art?
I do remember, and yes, my family are super creative. So my Wemba Wemba, my matrilineal side, so that's mum's side. So we are Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara people, but a lot of the Victorian Aboriginal mobs, we follow our matrilineal line. Not all, but we're very matriarchal, and that really informs my work as well. So I can go back to my great-great-great-grandmother as far as my Wemba Wemba women go. So we're very staunch in that line, and it's also a part of being strong in your identity that, you know, I don't particularly identify as with the words Indigenous and Aboriginal and First Nations, even though they're convenient and they're a convenient way to convey, you know, sort of collective ways of identifying quickly. But I've never had anyone say to me, you don't look Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara. I've had a lot of people say, oh, but you don't look Aboriginal. Really? Which part? How are you? And I'm like, there's no part. I'm not a pizza. There's no half.
No.
It's just, I'm a full human being.
Yeah.
And I'm fully part of my family and community. So I get a really nerd out about the work of Gloria Anzaldúa, who talks about borderlines and was an incredible Latina scholar who spoke about speaking back to things like the term mestiza, which is when you're, you know, mixed culturally, but saying that you have to remind people to not split us into binaries, that we're whole humans, and it's actually colonialism and the violence of that, and you know, the constraints of you know, heteronormativity being placed on people and trying to split us up into, you know, being easier to identify. If you're easier to identify, people want to control you. It's easy to control you. It's easier to sort of try to break you down. But when you confound people with the multiple parts of yourself and that plural identity, it's something very unique and very important to hang on to. And it's like we're creating, you know, a new way of being all the time.
And I think when you were saying that it's convenient to be called Aboriginal or First Nations, it's convenient to call yourself those things. The question that popped up in my mind is like, convenient to who? You know?
I think, like, especially, I mean, I teach a lot of students, particularly international students, and you have to sort of start out here and bring it in because the lack of knowledge about us as Aboriginal people and our resistance and the impact of colonial violence and invasion here is so unknown and so still not taught enough in primary and secondary schools that by the time you get to uni, your student might be taking an Indigenous unit for the first time in their life. They might be meeting an Indigenous educator for the first time in their life. And then if you're an international student, that context is even more separate. So to say I'm First Nations, Aboriginal to this place, Indigenous, they're the broader terms that are convenient, and then I'll tell you who I really am in my language, not in English. You know, so it's that. But, yeah, the creativity in my family came, like my grandmother Rosie was a painter, and she really encouraged me to paint and draw. She would make me draw her and then she would draw me. So we'd do these exchanges, and that's one of the best things you can do with kids, just to sit with them. And, you know, if you ever had the pleasure of sitting with a child and saying, do you want to draw pictures?
Yes.
Like, most kids will enjoy that generally.
It's an exchange, it's a conversation.
Yeah, and it can be funny.
Yeah.
You know, and it should be funny. Like, it'll bust your ego if a kid draws you in a way that you find non-complimentary. It's like, that's not what I look like. But it's funny because, you know, they really, they'll crack your ego right open, you know. And they're honest. They don't have a filter. They're speaking the truth. So that was really encouraged in us. But I was also making like little maquettes and things out of sticks and leaves and like little bush fairy off, always doing things by myself and making models of things.
Oh, I love that so much. How does that, do you see that in your practice now? That, you know, the
I'm
kind of silliness?
basically making the same thing I was making when I was a kid. It's just on a bigger scale, and sometimes people pay me to do it.
Yes. We love that.
But I realised that's what I was doing, and it only sort of happened maybe last year with Shadow Spirit at Flinders Street that the incredible Kimberly Moulton curated, Yorta Yorta, like extraordinaire curator and visionary. So it was a real honour to be in that show, and I made a version of the houses, the sort of installations that I make, and I projected a film into it. But I also collaborated with my Calabrian Sicilian cousin, Paola, who's a filmmaker, to make the film that sat in there. So that was really important to us because we're exactly 9 months and 1 day apart. And we're more like sisters and very close as friends. And if if any of you that have a cousin that you get to be really good friends with, you know how precious that is.
Yeah.
It's a very deep bond
It
that
is.
you have. Yeah. So I realised I was just making multiple versions because we moved around a lot when I was a kid. So I am now living in, I'm 50 this year. This is the 40th house that I've ever lived in. House, home, caravan, a couple of caravans, a couple of like little bungalows. We moved around a lot, and then I moved around a lot in my 20s, and even at the moment I'm still renting, so who knows if I'm moving again.
It's hard
with
out
the way
here.
things are.
Yeah.
So I think I just kept making these versions of a dwelling that I could permanently reside in, but most of the time it lives in my imagination. So I love making these dwellings, but they're also paying respect to the mission houses that my matriarchs were forced to live in on country during the assimilation period. So, yeah.
And those stories, you've learned them from your family?
Yeah, they're all storytellers. You just, even if they don't call themselves that, they will repeat stories. And again, when I was younger and didn't fully understand, I'd be like, oh, Mum or Nan, they're telling me that story again. And you realise the repetition, there's something very special in that, and that is your culture being taught to you by repeating it. And sometimes there might be a little difference in how it's presented or a little flourish added, or someone will say, no, remember, no, that's not right, that part's not right. So it's a living thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're amazing storytellers.
That's so gorgeous. I guess it goes back to when you were talking about creating art with people who don't think they're artists. Like it reminds me of that your family are storytellers even if they wouldn't call themselves storytellers.
Yeah, I love celebrating the art of the everyday. Like I live in Footscray. I was born there, but then grew up. So Mum and Dad, they actually opened a restaurant in Footscray in 1974 that's still there, and it was the first Aboriginal Italian restaurant in Melbourne. I claim it might be one of the first in the country as well. And then they separated, and Mum took me back up the bush, and then I would come down to Footscray for all my school holidays and hang out with my dad and the Calabrese family. So in Footscray, the landscape's changing a lot, the gentrification and apartments and everything that's going up. But there's still lots of places where you can find things that are undone and very industrial, and there's piles of things, and it's still messy, and it's still real enough that, communities who struggle, marginalised communities and poor communities and all the battlers of the area can still, like you just got to let Footscray be because it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it's got a really strong Aboriginal history of activism there too, because Uncle William Cooper, he lived in Southampton Street, 73 Southampton Street. He came there in his 70s as an elder from Cumragunja Mission. He walked off and he set up base there, and he would walk into the city down here to give lectures at Birrung on the river, and he would talk, and he was petitioning the king.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it does, yeah.
Yeah, so the roots of Aboriginal civil rights actually started in Footscray.
Learning. I'm learning today. You guys learning too?
I'm doing my teacher thing. I was at the uni today, so sometimes it's hard to switch off, but
I have a question about uni because what you were talking about before with some students who perhaps haven't learnt about Aboriginal history in this country and then for the first time learning about it in a uni setting, that's what happened to me in New Zealand. I'm Indigenous, I'm Māori, Ngāpuhi, Te Raroa, are my iwi, and the first time that I properly learnt about like colonisation and what actually happened with the Treaty of Waitangi was in a university setting, which is quite peculiar, quite an odd experience to have. But where I found a lot of solace and a lot of joy within the university setting, because it was quite a difficult thing for me to do. I don't learn that way. Was in Te Timu, which is the Māori school at the uni that I went to. So how does it feel for you being somebody who, an Indigenous, lecturer in that space? How does it feel for you being on that side of things and creating spaces within those institutions?
Look, I love it and I really appreciate it, and I'm very lucky. I've been there for around 25 years. A couple of times I've left to do other work, like I've curated in different spaces at First Peoples at Melbourne Museum and at ACCA for the Sovereignty exhibition and things like that. And I've got an amazing boss, KJ, Karen Jackson. She's a Yorta Yorta woman and she's our director. And she has a way of leading that she gives you the space to go and do things that bring you joy, do things that challenge you, but also, have you come back. And so that space is very unique in that way. Most unis have Indigenous spaces, but we're at VU, like we're in Footscray. We are a little poor uni. People underestimate us. They put shit on us. They think they're just a little former TAFE, not elite enough, part of the Big Eight. But it's great because we just do what we want.
Yeah, takes the pressure off.
Yeah, we do what we want at Mindani Balak, like in regards to how we push back on the institution. But we're really responsible to community, and we have a huge number of Aboriginal community activists, historians. Professor Gary Foley's Aboriginal History Archive lives at Mindani Balak. So that's an honour, and people come and engage with that and do research there. We've got a range of projects going on. I get to teach and do research. The teaching en masse of non-Indigenous students does wear you down. It's hard. It's actually very tiring. It's also an honour, but it's a burden at the same time because you want people to catch up so that you're not trying to cram all this into a unit like the one I teach, which is called Politics of Aboriginal Art. I'd love to just get onto the content about the artists and their work, but we have to do a lot of catch up about history first. And so until the rest of the educators in this country and schools catch up, then this is what we're left with, right? But I love the research and the creative practice I get to do there. That really excites me.
Tell us about the creative practice that you get to do there.
Well, I feel really grateful because it's an extension of my PhD work, which was looking at the erasure of Aboriginal women in visual arts and in leadership roles and in galleries and, who the directors are of these institutions. So, but, you have to sort of question, like, is success changing that, or is it us creating our own, Indigenising spaces, rematriating, reclaiming spaces, and doing things collectively as opposed to that, triangular leadership, top-down, ugly capitalist, way of doing things anyway. So it's like, where is the most potential for transformation within people and within community? That's what excites me. And we do a lot of creative research. So we're using creative methodologies to, really change what the concept of research itself is. And it involves arguing a lot with the institution, which is exciting. But also, when we, present projects that actually help people talk about who they are, work towards healing, work towards justice, that's really exciting. And I love doing all that stuff. So we're working with a lot of Aboriginal women in the western suburbs at the moment they've been either incarcerated through being abused, being in violent relationships, being targeted by the system, they're having their kids taken away. So we do a lot of work with them around how to do personal healing and collective healing for themselves and their families. And we're working towards policy change with the service providers. It changes you. You think you're going in to share something that you think you know, and every time it just brings me undone. And I sort of go, they've changed me, like they're my teachers. So it's a real honour to do it.
I want to skip back a little bit to before you said art, creating art with the everyday in mind. Does that, I'm thinking about your art tram, the Black Love art tram. Is that what you put into that, creating, it's this big piece of art that's going to travel around on a tram for a while, but something that could be pulled from your sketchbook.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a bit of both. Like everything that I put into that. Oh, this is really weird because I haven't spoken about this publicly. Should I do it? Okay, so 2 years ago, I was in a very long marriage, like a 21-year marriage, to a non-Indigenous person, and for a range of reasons that wasn't working anymore. And I think a lot of people, especially my age, have come out of COVID and they came out of relationships and a lot of people's lives flipped, and not to be flippant about people that lost their lives to COVID and the ongoing damages that it's caused. And so I thought I need to manifest black love to give me the strength to move into this other stage of my life, because we also have children.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that as gracefully as I could. And so I really drew on the black love of my community to do that, and it worked. So I kind of manifested. I just had to put artwork on a tram and have it travel through the city for a year to do that, and then actually got some black love in my life as well at this time now, which is very nice.
Oh, I love
as well
to
as
hear
community love. I got
Yeah.
some romantic love, so that's really nice.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. I think it's quite serendipitous. It's on a tram
it's-
moving.
Yeah,
The
but
black
I
love.
mean, people meet people on trams. Like, so, the personal and the political are very, tied together for me. And, these materials are all from, an art shop in Footscray that I've been going to for like 20 years. And it was just a modest drawing that I thought, oh, I'll have a go. I didn't have any confidence that it'd get selected, but when it did, I was just really excited. And it did bring a lot of joy. Like, I had relatives and friends telling me, oh, I saw your tram, and they'd send me little videos. And I felt just as excited for the other artists. There were 6 of us in 22. This year, there's been more. There'll be more again. And it's just such a great program. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Tell us about some of your upcoming projects. Have you got things on the go? What's cooking?
I've always got something cooking. Not like I can be. It's funny because people say to me, "You seem really busy and you do a lot," and I'm like, "I do, but I also rest really hard when I have to." And like a lot of us, my mental health, can be varying depending on what's going on, and I have a lot of transgenerational trauma and traumas that I experienced. In my life, so I can get very tired and I just need to completely be avoidant, and I'll just stay at home, and I will literally cook a lot of food at home, but I also might do some bush dyeing, which is like a cooking process. It's like, if anyone's done it, it's like you're making a huge stock and you apply heat to that, and you're boiling gum leaves and bush flowers and sometimes a little bit of vinegar and rust. So it's very I'm very black witchy. It's like
Yes.
my cauldron at home, and it steams and bubbles and boils and goes through the house, and I go around cackling to myself. And got my little black dog who kind of looks like a cat. So I'm like, I don't know. I read a lot of Meg and Mogg books when I was a kid. If anyone remembers those, do you know what I'm talking about? She was a witch. She was cool. So there's that, but we've got more of the Black Women's Healing Project work coming up. And we're in discussions, I can't really say because it's not out yet, but we're in discussions with a really cool arts organisation to present their work. So that excites me because they do not describe themselves as artists, but I've taught them bush dyeing. And I'm really looking forward to bringing up some of their stories to the surface and then figuring out ways we can curate that into that space and get them some, recognition and have their voices heard, and just give them the buzz of being, in a space where they're being celebrated, and have their family and friends and community see what they can do, and just to hear what they are experiencing and to provide some healing for them. That excites me a lot.
That's so special. The cooking. I love the cooking so much. The bush dyeing is, that's so gorgeous. Like, it's not just, you don't just buy a packet of dye. You've got, you're actually going out and grabbing stuff to dye this. I also really love how part of your artistic practice is bringing out other people's artistic practice and helping them surprise themselves with what they can do and what they're capable of. I really love that. I feel like that is really modeling, what did you say before? You said top down, and that's the one that stuck in my head, but the kind of more circular model of working as a collective and in community.
Yeah, like weaving circles. So I've been teaching weaving a little bit as well, and that's been a contribution I can make to the Book J Collective that Seal founded and does with other people, and it's just like then I just feel like I'm of some use. I can do something that it's just a small moment of like a healing, mindful, slow, gentle little practice that I can do with the kids that come along to the workshops. Yeah, it might be just I'll get inspiration and just grab it. I have a huge shelf of art pens that I'm obsessed with and notebooks and things, and I'll just grab something and sit at my kitchen table and draw and just let things come to the surface that you're sort of thinking about. It gives me a way of processing stuff. Yeah.
I'm obsessed with that as an artistic practice because so many people think that you have to be perfect at something before you put it out into the world. And that's like kind of the antithesis of what art should be. It should be a conversation. It should be something that, is unexpected within you. And yeah, I'm delighted by your artistic practice, Paula. Oh my gosh. I'm like giggling and kicking my feet. Can you tell?
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Where do you feel most creative? Is it in just those quiet moments at your house when you've got your witchy cauldron on the go?
It's when I'm in the shower.
Saucy.
Does anyone else? And also when I'm in the Maribyrnong Aquatic Centre hydro pool and the spa with a lot of elderly people that I love hanging out with because I work out there and there's not a lot of young people there, which I like because their energy is very calm and they're also really flirty and cheeky. And so they just they're there hanging out and, trying to pick each other up and just being funny and adorable. There's a lot of elderly Vietnamese community and a lot of South American elders and it's just beautiful. So I just sort of, once I get into water, I can let my mind wander and and I'm, neurodivergent. So in the water, I tend to rock a lot, and I didn't know what that was because I've been doing that my whole life. And now I understand, I do a bit of stimming and stuff, but I didn't know. My kids and young people teach me what the names for these things are now. I just got called weird when I was a kid, and I got bullied a lot. So the things that I was doing, they actually became the stories for my work. So all the things I got attacked for are all the things that I now get valued for. So I love sharing that with young people as well, that, bullying does feel devastating when it's happening, but please know it's because the bully sees something in you that is triggering them for whatever reason, not justifying any of their behaviour, but it triggers something in them that they know you've got and it irks some people. Yeah. And I think when you've got that vulnerability, you have to really protect it and see it as a superpower or a strength or just something very fragile, something very vulnerable. 'Cause sometimes it feels really strong and sometimes it feels like it makes you too vulnerable and too much of a target. So you've just got to find a place to be okay with it. Yeah. And then, just let yourself be as weird as you need to be because one day people, they might not, but as long as you start to perceive it in a way that you're not seeing yourself as deficit or bad and that all those outside experiences are formative and it just takes time to get to a point of living with it. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah.
One of my friends, I was mentioning to her, I was like, oh yeah, I have ADHD because I'm also neurodivergent, as I'm fiddling with my fan in front of me. But I was like, oh yeah, I have ADHD. And she was like, aren't we all a little bit neurodivergent? She's like, isn't that we're just tutu, we're just playing with things, we just pick up things and put them down and play with them and channel our frustration or vibes through them. And sometimes that ends up in creating art or creating little bush fairies or, stuff like that. I think it's beautiful. One of the questions that I'm really interested to hear your answer about is that there's kind of this, I've experienced this, I don't know if you have, but there's kind of this stereotype that people of colour or Indigenous people can only create art from a traumatic place or can only create art around trauma. Obviously your work, what we've already talked about, challenges that, but how else do you challenge that in your work and your art?
I think, I mean, for me, especially with those installations that people can walk inside of and sit inside of and smell and touch and feel, and sometimes I put cushions on the floor and just say, you can lay down in here and have a nap if you want to. My goal when I started making them, which was most like explicitly with the PhD installation at Footscray Arts, I wanted to really challenge non-Aboriginal people to understand what our people had experienced and continue to, but I wanted my people to feel comforted when they went in there. And so I knew I had to get the visual language right in order for that to be conveyed without writing it or without it being explained in any other way except a immersive physical sensation. And I wanted the space to be fully accessible, so there were no barriers to anyone to entering the space and being in there. And so, I wanted it to feel soft to mob who'd felt trauma and understand trauma, or any marginalised people or anyone who's experienced trauma would understand what I was conveying in the space, because the fabrics were, I bush-dyed them quite heavily to the point that they were very dark and stained. So, some people might perceive that as ugly, or they might perceive it as imperfect or dirty, whereas when Mob went in there, they were saying to me, it reminds me of the mission house, it reminds me of my nan's house, it reminds me of being in the bush, it reminds me of being, in my homelands. And so there was a recognition of what I was letting come to the surface of the fabric. So even though that story's always there, because you can't take it away.
No.
So like healing isn't, forgiveness isn't everything's good now and you just let it go and you go past that stage and it's done. It's a lifelong process. And for me, I think there's a lot of power in being angry, and there's a lot of power in your rage, and there's a lot of power in, celebrating that and honouring it, but also to allow yourself forgiveness for yourself and for the mistakes that you might keep making or the way you perceive yourself. But you don't have to forgive your perpetrator. So that's what I wanted that space to hold, that it's unconditional forgiveness for yourself. But it's very challenging to make a work that is very personal and very public at the same time. And for some reason I keep doing that, and I don't know why, but I do.
How do you balance that?
I think it's just like a compulsion. So I don't make work consistently. I don't have a studio. I'm not making work constantly. If I get invited to make something, I'll go, I think I could make that in time. And then I'll go, could I get an extension, please? Do you think, could I hand it in a little bit later? Like, how far can I go up to the due date?
Yeah.
So I play around with time a lot. And then the work, so when people are inside the work or visiting the work, I want them to feel a sense of timelessness, that you can't quite feel like what period it is or what year or what time of the day it is. I want them to feel like lost but centred at the same time. So I think that's kind of what trauma feels like anyway. So can we ever take it away? Like, it's always,
I think it kind of draws back to what you were talking about before, like art as a conversation, and perhaps your art as a conversation between trauma and healing and rest and joy all in one.
Yeah.
Tell us about where you find joy, aside from Cowboy Carter. We've already discussed that. But tell us about when you get joy and when you feel most joyful.
Like last night, so I have a family dinner once a week. So I live on my own now, so I invite my grown kids to come and have dinner, and they bring their partners. So that makes me really happy to see my babies all happy and to feed them. Like, that's one of my love languages. If that's still a thing that people talk about, love language.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I love feeding people. And I love cooking, like I find heaps of joy in that. So that makes me happy just to see everyone sitting around talking silly and maybe watching an episode of something that makes them laugh and gossiping and...
Oh, I love gossiping.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of, but this can't leave the house. This is just between us. It's that kind of... That just makes me really excited. Like, I feel all my cells like rushing to the surface going, ooh. But I'm really good at keeping secrets. I really respect people's privacy.
Yes. That's an important part of gossiping. That's the other side of gossiping.
You gotta be careful.
Secrets.
You gotta be really careful. Yeah. And it's not malicious. Like, it's not to hurt anyone. So you're not repeating anything. You're just amongst yourself in your home, you know. But yeah, like dogs, like animals. It's so cheesy. I sniff flowers a lot when I go for walks, like
That's
roses. I have an app on my
delightful.
phone to identify plants because I have a lot of plants. I have a lot of house plants.
You've got to after this, you've got to give me like a list of artists that you've talked about, apps, songs that you listened to when you were a kid, as well.
Yeah.
A reading list after this.
Yeah, it's a lot of country and western and a lot of R&B. You know, Brunswick Street in the 90s was really fun. That was fun. Going to clubs in the 90s with my cousins was really fun, to black clubs. There were more black clubs then, probably now. It was really fun. We went dancing.
That sounds like a healing
a lot.
space.
Yeah, that was the best. Like owning a dance floor, that's so joyful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I get older, I miss dancing because I don't know if you all know this, younger people, but we're not that welcome in clubs when you get over 35. And I think that's very unfair. I want to open a nightclub for 50 plus.
That's Paula's next project.
Yeah, I actually think I will. I think I'll just have a public dance party for 50-year-olds only plus. No,
That's our
youngins.
stance. Now, I want to check in. We were going to do some audience questions. How do you feel about that? Where can we go?
I think everyone here looks so sweet, so I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
Has anybody got any questions? How are we feeling? There's one.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Nina. I just have one question about when you said with your art, you try and push time. And I remember there was a conversation I had with a few of my friends back, I think before COVID. And I remember when they said, with us, I'm African, there's a sense of our timing with everything is a little bit different to when you go to the Western time, when it's like very particular by on time, this particular time. So when you push your timing with your art, does it feel like you kind of play into that? Because it feels somewhat relative when you did say that you make it very much particular about your way of interpretation, not how time is relatively put in the Western world. Is that your go for it?
Yeah, kind of. I love playing with time, but it also gets me in trouble a lot because I'm late a lot. And I'll experience it myself. I'll think, oh, that's so rude. They didn't show up on time. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm late all the time. And we talk about time so much, but it's like, it's really this construct that our people didn't live with. Well, they live with time, but it's different because we talk a lot about sunrise to sunset, as in the day and also in a lifespan. So if someone passes away, like when we say goodbye to them on the funeral booklets, even on the headstones, we'll say their sunrise was this date and their sunset was this date. So it's like a life cycle approach. And, you know, when you talk about some days feeling longer than others, like why does that happen? You know, what is happening? So my mum and nan, they would tell so many stories that I felt like I was living in their time from their childhood, and then they would tell stories about the old people, and they might be talking about ancestral beings, or they might be talking about my great-grandmother or my great-great or my great-great-great-grandmother. So they would tell cross-generational stories. And mostly I was listening to these in the 1980s as a little kid, and I felt like I was time travelling all the time. So when I make art now, I go into that space where I just stretch it out, and I love also being resistant to time. It annoys me that it's used to disempower people and control people as well. I think schools have got it all wrong about time. 9 a.m. is way too early for kids to be ready, especially high schoolers.
Yeah.
It exhausts them. They don't cope with that. School should start like at 10:30 or 11 and it should finish at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Things like that, I think we just, you know, and yeah, if we look at the industrial reasons why we have this 8 hour thing, it's all about white industrial, you know, supremacy and control of bodies and productivity and all that. So, yeah, but I love playing with it. It's one of the funnest things to do. And then I get anxious. I'm like, how much time do I have left, like, to do all the things and to travel to the places I want to? And then I'm like, maybe my job is to travel to my country and spend more time there. Like, you know, yeah, it's a bit mysterious.
No, but I relate to it in a like in a Māori worldview and Te Ao Māori, time is, cyclical. Is that not, the present moment is not just the present moment, but it's what has happened before and what is to come. And it's kind of like I'm doing a great job of visualising it, but I really heavily identify with what you've been talking about with time. Yeah.
It's slippery.
Yeah.
It's slippery.
Do we have any other questions? We still have a roving mic, and I think we still got some time. Hand up.
I'm nervous you're taking notes.
I know. Well, I did that because I'm so scared that I'm I'm just a nervous person. But I
don't
was
be scared.
wondering, hearing that you're neurodivergent, as a creative, do you ever find that you sort of play with that into your practice? Do you find that you lean into it to sort of see what your more authentic self produces? Or do you find that that's really almost challenging to do because of such a sort of Western colonial neurotypical structure that we're always sort of being tied back into, even if it's maybe not by choice?
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you. Yeah, so I definitely play into it because I can hyper-focus for hours and days and get lost on something. I'll play the same song over thousands of times and I never get sick of it. And then when you're around other people that don't have that same ability, you realise that can be irritating to other people. Well, they're like, you're playing that again? Why? I'm like, because I heard something else in it. I didn't notice that before. So it's like every time to me feels like a different experience. And then when I make something or draw something, it's the same thing. I could just keep repeating it over and over. So it's that ability to be very repetitive. And there's a rhythm in that that's very soothing for me and very calming. And I like my routine, even if it changes every day because I have trouble sticking to it. But I know what I want it to be like. And so if it feels right, then that's what I'm aiming for. It's like an emotional pitch that I'm trying, like a frequency I'm trying to get to in the work I make. And then the other stuff that stresses me is trying to meet the deadlines, which is such an awful word. I'm trying to meet the due dates and the timelines, That's what stresses me out, fitting into that stuff. But the making, that's so beautiful and healing and freeing, and I feel like I could fully be myself in that when I'm alone with my practice. It's probably when I feel like I'm my truest self, and it's very private as well. Yeah, but thank you. That's a really good question. Oh, thank you. Yeah, you shouldn't be nervous about that question.
No, that was an incredible
so
question.
good.
I wish that I had taken it from your brain and
like
then it had come out of my
essay.
mouth. Yeah.
That's an essay. That's a podcast. That's a whole thing.
I feel the same about creating and letting your kind of neurodiversity just run free, because that I feel like when I've tried to leash that or box that, that's when I make the grossest, weirdest things that I hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this morning I was really feeling it because I realised I was doing a dance number from an Anne Margaret and Elvis Presley film in my black underpants with just my jumper on. And if anyone knows those movies, do you know what I'm talking about? I was really obsessed with Anne Margaret when I was a kid because I just thought she was so sassy. And I'm like, I want to dance like that. And she would just do it in underpants, like tights and a top. And it's kind of how Beyonce is on stage now and Taylor and all the other. Women have been doing this for ages. Yeah. And so I just did a little Anne Margaret dance in the house and I was like, yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm in a good zone today. Mm. So sometimes it just has to come out of my body in a dance or singing or making, or I'll cook a meal before I go to work. It's a nervous energy that's got to emerge.
And I'm glad that you danced around in your underwear this morning because you really brought it tonight, didn't you? My gosh. Everybody say thank you and give Paula a big round of applause. Incredible. I feel like I've learned a lot, and if anybody could scan me their notes, because I saw some note takers, I would love that. There's a couple of reading lists coming my way too, which I really am looking forward to. So I want to say thank you to Amy Butler-Barsi and Rose McNeil-Young from Colourbox Studio for letting me hold the mic. This episode was recorded at the Channel with support of the Arts Centre Melbourne's Play program. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tonight.